You're like so flustered.
I was so mad when that happened. I was like, son of a if it wasn't that in the movie, I would have walked out, but I would have wanted to.
It's like, holy like this is...
But this movie, nothing happens.
I'm excited for it.
I lost the part of me being a cinephile that I really grabbed onto.
I was really amazed by that scene. Javier Bardem.
Oh my God.
Love it. Love it. Hello and welcome to our podcast. We're Knox and Noah, and today we're talking about Dune, Part 2. Got it right this time.
Yes.
I'm very excited. Also, I didn't look at other cameras, so very excited about that as well.
We're off to a great start.
I know what I'm doing. This is great. So we didn't tell you guys before, but we don't talk about these movies beforehand to each other. So we have absolutely no idea what each other's about to talk about. What we enjoyed about the movies, what we don't. So yeah, I'm really interested in hearing your thoughts about it, because over the past week or so, you've been like, oh my God, what do you think? And I'm like, I can't tell you. So
let's start with you though. For Saltburn, I started.
Right.
So I think for this, it's only fair for you to say your thing first.
Okay, well, I'll say, I guess first starting off, I watched the original Dune this morning, actually.
From the 80s.
The David Lynch version. So he wrote and directed it. And I personally enjoyed the remake better. I liked the movie. It was like really fun and everything like that. Normally I'm like, oh God, don't make remakes. The original is always better. But this one felt more like a stage play versus the most recent Dune series, Dune movies, where they're more like vast and expansive. With the cinematography, you see these wide open spaces with the dunes, the sand dunes, and then also just everything is so massive. Yeah. Everything is so huge. The music is like pumping and everything like that. And you just feel it in your soul. And it's like you're a part of everything that everyone's going through and dealing with and everything like that as well. And yeah, so this morning when I was watching the original one, I was laughing. I was like super giddy and like, oh my God, I know that part. Oh my God. It actually kind of helped me understand a little bit more of the story, because with that movie, they really kind of told you more rather than showing you everything that's happening. Like with the new series, it's more about showing rather than telling, showing you the beautiful cinematography, showing you just everything that's happening within Paul's story, as well as everybody else that's a part of his story. So yeah, but that was just, I don't know, I was just like super giddy, like, oh my God, this is like super cute. Like it was just, the Baron was also very gross, like way more disgusting than the one in this one. Yeah, I honestly was like, I'm eating and this is like really disgusting. Yeah. But yeah, it was basically like I was watching it on stage, and it was very dramatic and everything like that. But yeah, also the most recent Dune, I really enjoy how diverse everything is. Like they're in Arrakis, like so many different people of seemingly different cultures and things like that. With the 1984 David Lynch Dune, it was more just everyone looked kind of the same. We had, the Harkonnens that were a little bit different, but they were way more hairy in that one. So I liked that they were kind of barren, with the Baron being like really kind of reminded me of, in this one, kind of reminded me of Jabba the Hutt.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, with the
massiveness.
Yeah, just the massiveness and everything like that. But for the David Lynch version, also, when they go to Arrakis, everybody kind of looks the same. And I'm like, bruh, like, I'm going to quote this. And now I'm just like, I shouldn't be quoting this. Anyways, I'm going to quote it anyways. But I was basically just like, if you're from Arrakis, why are you white? Because everybody was all just like the same. So I really enjoyed just all of the diversity, the expansion of the worlds and everything like that in Denis' version of Dune. So I'm going to stop talking because I feel like I'm saying a lot about how I felt about it, but I want to get more into like what you think, because you didn't actually watch the original, right?
Not forever. I haven't seen it in a
so you saw it a long time
ago. And I have to say, I feel like fans of Dune, the OG fans of Dune, are more fans of the source material. And I feel like the concept of remaking it wasn't as blasphemous, because I feel like even fans of Dune felt like maybe because of the technology at the time, it was more of a missed opportunity and that there was a better way to tell the story. So I would say they're more apologists than fans, because, of the source material that they loved, that was kind of the only representation of it that they had at the time. But even the people who love the original stuff will admit the movie didn't really get to its potential, whereas they're super happy with these films.
The most recent.
Correct.
Okay.
And now with, you talked a lot about the Lynch one. So are we going to be differentiating these two movies for like part 1 and part 2 in what we're doing? I mean,
honestly, I feel like part 1 is a lot of the it's kind of the starting point.
Sure.
And then everything comes and culminates in this latest movie. So we're definitely going to be focusing on part 2.
Yeah.
But it's just interesting to see the difference in
I love doing that.
because the original Dune was both parts together, which are technically all just like the first book as well.
Right.
So yeah, we had that huge setup with the first movie and everything like that. A lot happening, but also not that much happening. And a lot of people I was talking to about it were like, the first movie was kind of boring and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, that hurts my heart, man. Like, this movie is freaking amazing. Are you kidding me? Like, especially the second time I watched it. The first time I was like, I didn't really know. Like, literally the first time I watched it was in theaters again when they re-released it about 2 weeks before the second one came out. So when I first watched it, I didn't really know much about Dune. I hadn't read the books. I still haven't read the books. Eventually I will read them. I promise you guys. But it's one of those things where it is a huge setup. It's lots of buildup until you get to when he is finally in the Firmin, involved with the Firmin, and actually getting to the point where he is the Messiah and he is leading the way to their paradise.
So I have a hot take for this, but I think I want to save it for a little bit because I don't want
hot take for the movies in general.
Yeah, for the new movies, but I am
What? Okay.
Yeah, let me just start out by saying I'm going to talk about these separately because I'm conflicted with part 1 and I'm not conflicted with part 2.
Okay, what's the
conflicted is the first movie. The first movie I feel so narratively it was frustrating for me because the movie felt like an explanation telling me everything that I need to know in order to understand part 2.
Yeah.
That was kind of it. Like there really wasn't a lot, kind of like what you said, there's not a lot that happened, but like literally there's a thing where that first little like killer hummingbird came at him. Initially, it's like, here's how you walk on the sand. Like it's explaining everything. It's like
I like how they did that though, because if they hadn't, I mean, it's kind of
totally. And I
one of those things.
Totally get the function of it, but narratively, it felt like here's everything you need to know in order to understand part 2, and that's kind of it. Now, but I will say visually, like the cinematography, the set design, the costumes.
Dude, the set deck is like
everything was gorgeous. It won like 6 Oscars, and all of those I completely agree that it should win. And before I move on to part 2, there's a quote in the first movie that's like one of my favorite quotes ever. Can I?
Wow, okay.
Oh my gosh. And I will tell you why after. Okay. So the quote is,
I'm trying to remember the movie.
Pixie Dream Boy Timothy Chalamet.
Did you just say Pixie? Wow, okay.
Yeah, I don't.
Hot takes.
Yeah, I don't totally get that. He's a great actor, but he's being put in a lot of roles where I just don't buy it. And this is one of them.
Okay.
We can discuss that. But when he's talking with his dad about not wanting to be like a leader or whatever, his dad, Oscar Isaac, who I adore.
He was great.
His line, he said what his father told him.
Yeah.
A great man doesn't seek to lead. He is called to it. And when I heard that,
Is that funny?
Oh my God, it's so funny.
Why?
Because that is the most romanticized justification for nepotism I have ever heard in my life.
Oh,
Called the lead. It's your kid who's going to take over the kingdom. What are you talking about?
Yeah, but at the same time, like maybe in that sense, he had an idea of the Messiah,
Well, but he said he wanted to be like a fighter pilot. But then that's what his dad told him, so he decided to leave. But I'm just like,
yeah.
I just thought it was funny. Now, where on this? Oh, and also, like, I have to give a disclaimer about myself.
Okay.
So sci-fi and fantasy movies don't always work for me.
I love sci-fi and fantasy.
Yeah, so this is going to be an interesting show because there's going to be movies where, like, when they create, like, fake words, which I understand all words are made up, so
yes.
don't come at me. I get it. Son of an English teacher. I get it. But
anyone knows that movie reference, by the way, comment below.
But whenever, like, they make these fake worlds and fake, like, cultures and places and things and use all these different words that aren't really real, it's kind of like I had a niece when she was a toddler who she was a talker. Like, she would talk to you nonstop, but she didn't know any words.
Yeah.
So it would just be babble. And it's like, I know in your head it makes sense what you're saying, but I got nothing. And that's kind of—
I'm trying to remember what you're referencing.
In the first movie,
okay.
Like, there was so much when they were establishing, like, the people, the societies, and explaining everything. It was Greek to me, where I'm like, I don't know.
I think that's the point, It's there are multiple worlds. There are multiple forms of communication. They had the sound, they had the non-speakers, the ones that were doing sign language. They had the voice. They had different languages. I mean, these are different planets. Of course, they're going to be different. I know,
but it's hard for me to find a grounding point for me to be able to connect to it.
Well, I mean, that's not their fault.
I know. That's why I'm putting this on
their language.
That's what I'm saying. Like, take what I say in this episode with a grain of salt, because it's like a lot of times they're saying stuff. I'm like, I swear to God, that's a piece of IKEA furniture. That word you just—
After a certain point, though, you start to get involved in their as you start to get involved in their story, you start to, like, get acclimated and understand it. Like, I'm thinking about, like, movies like that where it's like literally almost the entire movie is this random not sign language, but random colloquialism, and it's just like you get it after a certain point.
And
it's
I'm
like
so
learning a
happy for you
language.
that
You get it after a certain point. Anyways,
I'm so happy for you that you do, but for me, not so much. But
let's get back to
it now. Part 2. I wasn't conflicted.
2. Yes. Okay.
Visually, I thought it was not it. I thought the costumes and the set design and everything, it was just sand and just brown, and I felt I missed
Dune.
No, I understand, but I'm comparing the richness of the first movie,
okay,
and the set design for the first movie to the second one, and it's just so fundamentally, like, scale back. And I get it for the story, but for me, without me really totally connecting, I lost the part of me being a cinephile that I really grabbed onto in the first movie. So this one, it's like, if I see one more goddamn Dune, like, I understand it's called that, but, like, I mean, am I watching Lawrence of Arabia? Like, there's a lot of sand in this movie. And again, I get it, but visually, it didn't grab me like the first movie.
I do get what you mean. I'm thinking of a lot of the cinematography in the first movie. As I was saying, like, the vastness of it all, you, like, really get to see everything. Also, I'm, like, obsessed with silhouettes. All of the silhouettes as Paul is, like, grabbing onto Gurney's hand as they're, like, flying out of that helicopter. You got the silhouette of him with the dunes in the background. It's like, holy shit, like, this is, like, you see and understand, like, the feeling that they have in that moment, And there are moments in part 2 where it's like, wow, as he's with Chani, like, in the desert and everything like that, sitting there and, like, watching, the sand dunes and everything like that. There are some moments, especially, oh my God, the moment when the worms come out of the dust around the very end, and it's just like, holy crap! You see how enormous everything is. There's a lot of negative space also that is involved in the cinematography, and I do understand what you mean. It's more about the like more of the hero's journey, more of him becoming the Messiah, the story, than it is about the visuals in the second movie. So I wonder if they will also, like they were nominated and won the Oscar for cinematography in the first one. I wonder if that's going to happen in the second one.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I feel like probably not with the set design like they did with the first one, just because there really wasn't. It was very muted compared to, because they were kind of more like guerrilla warfare also in this, so more of an underground feel to it. So
it was very underground. You're right. It actually reminded me a lot of Petra, the ancient city in Jordan. Actually, as I was thinking that in the movie, like a couple days later, when I was looking on YouTube, Architectural Digest also made a video about the fact that it looked like Petra, and I was like, oh my god, we're on the same page. Like I'm not the only one. So it was interesting seeing that underground city and being able to see like everything. Again, like you said, the first movie, the set deck was a lot more intricate, but there are a lot of details in this movie or in these films in general that it's like everything was so well thought up, thought out. Every single little detail was just like on point. Like I'm thinking of even like the makeup with the his mother, who becomes the queen mother and everything, but there's also that other queen mother who's, there giving her that knowledge and everything like that. I'm like obsessed with symbology. So on her forehead is the Egyptian letter for H. And as you're like going through and as you learn a little bit more, you learn that the Bene Gesserit give each other their knowledge from like the past, the present, the future, everything, and the knowledge of everyone else that's like passed before them. So the letter H with the circumpunct, which is like the symbol for Ra or the sun, which is on his mother's head, ends up becoming He, the word for eternity. In ancient Egyptian. So it's very interesting. I don't know if that's like the purpose of that or anything like that, but it's really interesting being able to see that. Also, I think when they're in like the waters, when they're getting the water of life from the worm,
from the baby worm,
and the woman is coming and getting the water of life, you notice there's a trigram from the I Ching on her chin, and that actually is the trigram for heaven. So it's interesting seeing like these little symbols and everything every so often. Again, I don't know if that's their purpose.
Probably.
But it's very cool. Much like, that esoteric symbology or symbolism in it as well. I love it. Love it.
I definitely liked that part of it. Again, I mean, you notice that stuff. That's your like world. That's not so much with
You're
mine.
like,
I'm more on
girl.
the narrative side. No. I mean, I think that stuff's great and it helps me appreciate it more. But I honestly, I love the director. I mean, Sicario is one of my favorite movies of all.
I haven't seen Sicario.
Oh, it's so good. It's so good. See the first one. It's amazing. But this one, it was a little rough. Again, with Timothée Chalamet, who I don't not like him. I just feel like Hollywood wants us to, they want to make him this leading man, and they put him in a lot of roles that he just straight up doesn't fit. Like this.
He's a great actor though.
Okay, but I just...
You didn't think he fit in this movie?
Not
Are you kidding me? Oh my God.
Especially when he's fighting. It's like if I sneezed in his direction, he would break in half.
Oh my God, but one of my notes was literally, Timmy is a great fighter.
No, he is not. I feel like that's why that fight at the end was so short and anticlimactic is because like any longer... It's kind of like when you see a picture of like an above ground pool and it's just a picture of people playing in it, because you can't show a commercial with that because you only have fun in those above ground pools for like 5 seconds. So a 30-second commercial, people are like, this is a stretch. That's how I felt with Timothée Chalamet with him fighting. It was like
these analogies.
Yeah. But it's just like, it just didn't work for me. He's just so frail. Like he's so little. And
that's one of the points.
I was so frustrated with that end fight.
Well, here's the thing. Okay, so with Paul Atreides, he's just a guy, you know? He's just a guy that grew up in, dukedom.
Yeah.
I don't know how you call it. I'm not like that.
He was a space prince. Let's just call it what he is.
So he's a prince. He starts off, wanting to be out in battle with others. He learns as much as he can about going into battle and fighting and everything like that. Sure, he is technically still a kid. Like he's a young adult or something like that. So I mean, you don't expect a young adult to be like this massive dude that's like, huh. But he is also the Messiah. So he's someone that is well trained within his mind and his body and his soul. Granted, he's not like stacked or anything like that. Not everybody can look like you, Noah. But but here's the thing. It's like
I'm gonna take that.
He is no. You look great. You look great. But like the thing is, like he is an unsuspecting. Like, you don't expect this guy to be as powerful as he is. And a lot of people, within this universe, underestimate him and his abilities. And I think that is one of the points of, the casting, but also him in general. You don't expect this guy to be the hero. But he is.
I wasn't expecting him to have like the physique of like Jason Momoa. But like it just
that's the thing. All of his mentors are these huge, powerful and well-skilled people, and he's learned from the best. So regardless of how he looks, he's still gonna do really well.
I guess it just in that role. Can we at least agree that Christopher Walken was miscasted?
Yeah. I was
fine
thinking that.
Because I love him with all of my heart, but he can only play characters where he's playing himself.
Yeah, I was actually surprised by his ability not to play himself in this, though.
His speech pattern was still there, so it really kind of took me out of it.
Same. Yeah, unfortunately, I love you, Chris Walken, but it didn't really work for me. But to your point with the battle at the end, I guess we're going to start with that.
Yeah, I guess. Why not?
I was a little disappointed when I first saw it because I hoped for, with Fade and Paul's fight, I was hoping for more wide shots and more like a longer fight.
They set him up to be a massive badass.
Exactly. So I was hoping for like, oh my God, like this is going to be like, wide shots, above shots. There were some in the original one too, which was interesting to me because I'd watched that after this. But when I saw it for the second time, I understood why they didn't do that. Because it was about them being face-to-face, tete-a-tete, just as intimate as possible. And, these cousins, which, obviously Fade doesn't realize he's fighting his cousin, they're the strongest of their tribes. They're also siblings, but they're also it's just like such an intense moment with them. And it's about them being that close together and the fight with them just being so like sharp and just so like you can hear every moment of this fight. You're there with them, like entrenched in it as well. You can hear every like slice, every like, I'm trying to like make it sound like it, but you can just feel the force of everything that's happening. The sounds of Paul as he's like, being stabbed and his breath changing and everything like that. And if I feel like I appreciated the way that they shot it more the second time, just because I understood a little bit more of the story as well. And then also like, I guess I want to talk about Fade and his first fight as well, because it was interesting how they did the contrast between the blacks and the whites in the stadium, which I was curious as to why they chose to do that. But I kind of wanted to see again with battles, with fighting face to face. I wanted to see a longer fight. We're not going to talk about Spartacus every episode, but this is like apropos. This is apropos because they are gladiators in an arena. So the thing is, like when you're in a arena, you have all these audience members and everything. It's basically like TV. You want the fight to last a little bit longer because they're paying for it. You know. So if I'm paying for a damn fight. I want it to last longer than 2 seconds because these fuckers are drugged. You know what I mean? And granted, like he fought the other guy who wasn't drugged, and you find out that the Baron was like setting him up. But that's the thing. Like you see how fierce Fade is, and I wanted to see him fight all three of them like on the same range, and we didn't really get that, which I was a little bit disappointed with. But I understood from a story standpoint like why they did that.
Sure.
As well.
Yeah, it was just interesting how they really set him up to be this dominant force, and then just like I said, for me, having seen it once, I was just like, that's it.
You only watched it once?
I only saw it once. I couldn't.
No.
I couldn't.
I watched it twice.
I know.
I was going to see it third time, but I didn't
couldn't.
At the time.
I couldn't do it. It just, again, there's things I could appreciate about it, but just not really for me. Even though I don't necessarily see myself seeing this first one again, I think I'd be more inclined to see that one just because visually there's way more to look at and way more to it. So Rebecca Ferguson, can I just say like her voice choice talking to like her baby? I mean, that was a choice. It kind of reminded me of like Christian Bale's Bat Rasp in the Batman movies where it's like, okay, that's her talking to the baby thing. I don't
remember specifically her voice when talking to the baby.
It was interesting.
Yeah,
and just in general, even when they're commanding people to do stuff, it's
the
interesting.
Voice.
It's such a choice.
I think it's one of those things where it's like it's so guttural.
Yeah.
And I think, obviously it's supposed to be because you're commanding someone. If someone did that to me, I'd be like, yo.
Yeah, I'd be like, what? No,
I mean, you wouldn't have a choice, technically.
True. You just kind of have to do what they say.
Especially at the end when Timmy was like, silence! Or, whatever he said. I was just like, whew, okay, I'll be quiet now.
Yeah, I'm not talking texting in the theater. We're good. I will say the one actor I think that had, because we'll get back to it, but let me just say, I feel like this was Timothy's movie in the point of there wasn't too much for other people to do. It was very Timmy heavy. But I think
that's the point. Again, he's
Paul
Atreides.
Sure, but I also kind of felt like for the most part, other actors were interchangeable because they didn't even like Dave Bautista, like he just yelled at people and then he got his ass kicked so freaking fast.
That was one thing I think as well for me, for Dave's character. So basically his character was kind of useless, and I think that's also the point.
Sure.
He could have been doing a lot more, but he was, he was a coward. He was, privileged, He didn't really have much to offer. So he was kind of like a counterpoint,
He was overcompensating by just screaming at everybody.
Exactly. So there's Fade, and then his cousin, I can't remember his name, but he's the one that's like, nobody cares about you because you are worthless. Right. And then Fade is the one that's like really powerful and everything like that. So it's an interesting contrast between the two, where Fade is actually like someone that is, you're terrified of being around him because he's so powerful and, he'll kill you in an instant. Mm-hmm. I mean, he killed his mom like with no problem. Yeah. And then you have Dave Bautista's character who has a lot, like talks a lot of shit, acts like he's got a lot going on. He's the big guy, but he really doesn't have anything to offer. Nothing. So, and also like, to your point, his death really was kind of just like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
It was just like, bye,
Served really shockingly little purpose. Mm-hmm. But I feel like all the actors, it could have been really anybody in this movie because they didn't have a lot to do except for
Javier Bardem.
Oh my God. He had to have had so much fun doing this movie because everything, I'm like, that dude had a blast.
He was so adorable.
He made so much with so little. Like it was so funny. I loved him so much in this movie. Oh man. Yeah.
Oh man. He was great. Specifically remembering him throughout as well. And every time Paul fulfilled the prophecy and not having just like okay, this is what's going to happen and he's going to like fulfill this part of the prophecy and everything. It was the moments that he started fulfilling them that we then got that feeling of, oh my God, as it is written, this is the prophecy. You know what I mean? And that's one thing I really enjoyed about the movie. It's like, it wasn't so much as telling you more, like it was more of like showing you and then saying, okay, this is us confirming what we believe is happening, especially when when he first rides the worm and everything like that. You know, we have everyone just like, oh yeah, good luck and everything. We have Javier, his character, not that big of a worm, you know, like, oh no. And then him riding the worm and everything like that. It's just like, as it is written, this is great. And him actually being able to do that as well with the music flowing and just pumping and just like going up and seeing the scales of the worm as well. The scales, like, I don't know. I was really amazed by that scene. I don't know about you. Are you gonna? You're giving me a face, so I'm like, God damn it. Okay.
So in that moment, I'm like, so this is basically James Cameron's Avatar.
Oh my God. I love how you said that because, oh my God. Okay. So I was thinking the entire time when I was watching the original, this is what Avatar would have been like if James Cameron had done it like 20 years prior as he wanted to. I'm so glad he didn't because we get Avatar, the incredible visuals and everything like that. With the original Dune, you get the shield, which is kind of funky looking. You get the worms, which aren't really great. You know, you can kind of see the halo of the CG and everything like that. But, you know, we have these movies, you know, now where it's like, this is how it was meant to be made. So I love how you said that. Sorry I cut you off, but that's great.
I just, when he was trying to get on the worm and everything, I mean, again, that's like, the only difference is he didn't have to hair fuck a pterodactyl or a whale.
Right.
You know, like he just had the little clamp things. But when that happened, I'm like, okay, James Cameron said there's 5 Avatar movies and each one's in a different terrain. So I'm like, I bet if someone listened really carefully, opening weekend of Dune Part 2, you're going to hear James Cameron ripping up the desert script for Avatar. Like, God damn it. Like this is that. And there was a lot after that. I couldn't not see Avatar stuff. And look, like Avatar is not the formatting of kind of the trope of like a member of the oppressors falls in love with the culture and the people of the oppressed.
It's not new.
It's not new. It's Pocahontas, Fern Gully, Last of the Mohicans, Dances with Wolves. But this is the part you might not be happy with. But like in the second movie, also had elements of the whole white savior complex. Of then him becoming, he went from in the first movie as a space prince to now space Jesus. And it's the little.
I knew you were going to say something like this. I knew it. I knew you were going to say something.
I'm not wrong. I don't think I'm wrong. So
I do want to mention before I do talk about the white messiah thingamajigger. So Dune was written in 1965. So way, way, way before Avatar.
I understand that it's based on the source materials.
Yeah.
I do concede that part, but I'm just saying it had those elements. So I'm like, ugh. So not only does he love these people, but now he's the one alone that can lead them because he's Space Jesus. It's
Space Jesus. Well, okay.
I mean,
this is the thing. He was created basically by the Bene Gesserit to become this person. Kind of accidentally, kind of on purpose, but they wanted to basically control him.
Sure.
He was being controlled before, obviously, by his mother, her teaching him, and then hopefully, by the Reverend Mother. But after a certain point, they started realizing that they can't control him. At the end, when he said, "Shut the fuck up, bitch, I'm talking," he cannot be controlled anymore. So he is the person that is leading the way on his own. Okay. So
I get it.
Being the white savior messiah thingy, I understand that. This version was way more diverse than the original movie, which I loved the diversity. I love how in each planet, there are different types of people. I mean, it's what we see in the world. It's what's needed in movies, especially. I can understand from that perspective, but it's like one of those things like, okay, the original movie had all white people, pretty much. There's way more diversity in this movie, so it's, very possible that, it's hard to say whether or not this would have been a thing. You know, it's
sure. And again, I know it's a source
depends on
material.
who they, you know.
We've been through all these iterations that get that criticism. It's kind of hard to separate something written in the 60s with today's day and age.
Right, exactly. And it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, technically he is that person that is helping these people that can't help themselves in this certain situation, but he comes in as an outsider, and they mention that in the movie, and that's what I like, because, you know, there are some times when it's like, oh yeah, I'm coming in and doing this thing and whatever, like the original movie, but this one, he's not technically like welcomed right away.
Right.
Some people, yes, because they've been brainwashed to thinking, okay, he's the Messiah already. But it wasn't until he started working with Chani that he actually started gaining that respect. So that's what I liked about this movie, where it's like, it's not an automatic, oh, hey, this white guy's going to help us. It's like, no, fuck this guy. He's an outsider. We don't like him. He thinks he's going to take over and do whatever. No. And then they start to realize, okay, maybe he is starting to understand our ways. Maybe he's someone that is, you know, going to help out in some sort of way. And then he really starts to become one of them. And he does become one of them eventually. So it's like, you know, I did think this movie was longer than it should have been, but I think it was important for them to give us those moments of the hard times he had with convincing himself, but also his mother convincing others and him convincing others that he was there for a purpose. Regardless of what he looked like, he was there for a purpose. He was there to help them, or is there to help them find their paradise, you know? And I think it's important because there are TV shows and things like that. Like, I'm thinking of like The Office, where it's like Michael Scott does things that people hate, and it's things that he should not be doing. HR, you know, he should be fired, and he should be, you know, all of these things. He should be in jail for half the stuff he does. But people in the show, people in the movie say, no, this is not okay, you know? And that's when it's like, okay, we understand this character's plight. We understand the other characters with this person. If these other characters are also saying this is not okay, then that is bringing in the understanding that the filmmakers, the writers, whoever is making this know what they're doing. Mm-hmm. If it's just like, oh, hey, like, we're just going to do this thing and like, whatever, fuck what everybody says, like, there's a whole different thing going on there. So I appreciated that aspect of it and them giving us that. So we have that push-pull. And then it's like, okay, cool. Like, now we know what's up. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I think that's a very fair point. Well stated. So thank you
cool.
for that. Yeah, no, it's great.
I'm like, am I making sense here?
No, that does make sense. Because you do need that permission structure in order for certain things to be okay. Exactly like with The Office, where because he's called out and because people are saying it's not, that's why when people criticize saying, well, it couldn't be made today, it's like, well, then why did you laugh at it before? Because the joke is that's not okay.
Right. So
it wasn't okay. That I don't think we were laughing about the same thing if you think that couldn't be made today. But going back to Rebecca Ferguson, I don't totally know the source material. I know you said you haven't read the books either, but like she's getting corrupted, right? Like she towards the halfway through the movie, it kind of felt like she was getting power hungry versus helping him. It was getting
weird, where she was saying like, "Let's get the children," and it's like, this is kind of creeping me out. It's kind of like how religious figures, though, kind of think of things as well. If you get them young, they will start to believe even more, and then we'll be able to kind of, I don't want to go against religion. I'm just saying in general, like how these things often happen. It's like, you know, once you start to believe at a young age, then you will continue most likely to believe at an older age because you started so young, sort of thing. So I do agree. It was very interesting how they decided to go about that with her character. I don't know if she was necessarily being corrupted because that was prior to her. No, that was after her drinking the water of life, right?
Yeah. I mean, she was doing stuff a little bit beforehand, but it seemed like she was really pushing her son pretty hard in certain areas where it felt like that was more to better her standing and her positioning. And it by the end, I just thought, okay, she's going to be straight up evil. Like I thought, especially with the way the weird voice with talking to her baby, I'm like, is Damien coming out of her? Is this like, is this Space the Omen? Like what's happening? Because it just felt, I feel like it's going to go a certain way with that, but I have no clue.
It was interesting with the baby, the interactions with the baby, because after the Water of Life, the baby basically knew everything about the universe and everything about the Bene Gesserits and everything like that. So she was kind of also being that voice of, I don't know if the voice of reason necessarily, but the voice of influence with her mother. Kind of like she had someone to chat with to go about doing things. But it's interesting them showing her in the womb and everything as if she's also a character that we can really not necessarily understand, but like she's an actual character there, not just someone
It helped to make her not
speaking.
seem just straight up crazy.
Yeah, like she's a real person rather than just like someone speaking to,
Don't worry.
nothing.
Rebecca Ferguson isn't going crazy. The fetus is talking. You can relax now.
I like how they also revealed that Anya Taylor-Joy was his sister, and then after a certain point, she was there seeing the water, flowing in Arrakis as well.
Yeah, that was interesting. When Brolin came back,
Played by Patrick Stewart in the original, I was
Are
like,
you
oh
serious?
my God, Gurney.
Oh, that's incredible.
Yes.
I forgot about that. When he came back, I was suspicious because it didn't feel like they would leave anyone alive. So the fact that he just had a little scar in his face that just made him look more badass. I'm like, is he a mole? Like it felt unrealistic that they would just let him live. Like
I think they were using them as like workers. And so, yeah, I could see
but
how
him
that
being
was
like a big warrior, it kind of felt weird that would be someone they would keep alive.
And he was such an
weak
active
person.
member of House Atreides as well.
So I just kept waiting for something until it didn't. But I'm like, I don't think you would keep the soldiers alive. You'd keep the workers alive to work for you.
Well, it's also interesting because the Fremen were really suspicious of them originally as well, before Paul was like, no, he's family. So, yeah, that is interesting. I mean, again, it was also in the original movie as well. So, assuming specifically the books as well. So, I'm curious also, like, what more would have been in the books to kind of explain that, like, a reasoning for them keeping them alive.
Yeah. There again, I feel like just anyone could have been interchangeable in this, but it was cool to see certain actors like Zendaya. I thought she was great in it.
Yeah, she was excellent.
I felt like I was expecting her to have more in this than she did.
A lot of people were complaining about the first Dune movie that Denny created, because she was advertised as like being a part of the movie. She was a part of Paul's visions. And I understand like how people were like, oh my God, Zendaya wasn't really in this movie, but it wasn't necessarily about her and her character yet. Again, the first movie was a lot about, Paul and the setup that we needed for the second movie. But like, yeah, I could see how like the advertising could have been like little deceiving.
Marketed her because of her
she was
name
in,
equity.
Like, 2 minutes of the movie.
If that, for sure.
But granted, I like how they did that as well, showing the flashbacks or flash ups of the future moments he would have with her, see her, and things like that. A lot of this movie was so mysterious, like both movies combined, so mysterious. Like, again, like they showed you rather than telling you. And that's something I love so much about, like, I don't know, these types of films. Like, don't tell me everything. Just kind of give me that sense of mystery. Give me that like wonder. And then I can like, I don't know, feel more later on.
I wish I connected more with this. I really do. But
you and your non-sci-fi.
And that's tough for me. I mean, I do love like Guardians of the Galaxy. That's my sci-fi. That I get. I mean, I'm a comic nerd, but like that I get. But I also feel like those movies, they make it a little bit more accessible, especially with the Earth connection. So maybe that's how it helps me a little bit.
Yeah.
But it's just, it's me. I'm the problem. Like when it comes to just
I'm glad
the
you know
sci-fi,
that about yourself.
Yeah, no, I am nothing if not painfully self-aware.
Self-awareness is very important.
So for me, it just, and I gotta say, I was a little annoyed at the very end when Rebecca Ferguson, after 5 hours of these movies, Rebecca Ferguson going, this is just the beginning. It's like, oh, screw you. What, 5 hours? This is not the beginning of nothing.
I love that. I was like, bruh.
Like, how dare you? How do not imply I had to sit through 5 hours to get to the beginning of something. I already sat through 2.5 hours to get the beginning of the story, which is Dune Part 2.
Yeah.
How dare you, young lady?
You're like so flustered.
I was so mad when that happened. I was like, son of a, like, if it wasn't that in the movie, I wouldn't have walked out, but I would have wanted to because I was so offended by that.
Yeah, I thought that was, they're going to be doing the third movie and it's also the second book. So I was actually really surprised because again, like I hadn't read the books, but I thought that they were going to finish everything off in the second movie. So it was interesting having that little cliffhanger as well, that they're still going to be fighting the houses? They're going to be fighting the houses in the next book or movie. So yeah, we have another 3-hour movie coming. And I feel like, I'm excited for it.
I can tell.
I feel like I'm going to, shut up. Oh my God.
No, I can tell.
I'm going to read the books, or at least the first 2 books that these are based off of. And I'm interested in seeing like the differences and everything like that. And also just getting more like understanding with the stories as well. Like I'm not much of a literary book reader. I read screenplays more. I would be really interested in like reading the screenplays for Dune. Because I feel like they'd be really good. Especially the descriptions of everything. I don't know. It's hard to know like how much better a screenplay will be versus like watching the movie.
Yeah, and I wonder, I was surprised that they hadn't started filming this one during part 1, or when they were filming part 1, especially because I believe that was the whole thing, that they didn't film both of them at the same time.
I'm pretty sure they didn't.
Yeah, I don't think they did, but just the fact that the first movie really, there isn't a lot going, like it's a huge gamble to be like, hey, we're explaining a movie that might not get made. Like that's how the first one was. So my assumption is, because Warner Brothers did at least verbally commit to the 2, hence why they allowed it to be called Part 1. I wonder if they're waiting to see how well it did to determine if the second movie would be the end of the whole story.
Oh, that's interesting.
And the fact that it made over $400 million worldwide during like the aftermath of the pandemic where not everyone was in the theater, I think was enough confidence to be like, we could probably make more after that because that's not ideal theater going time. So if it did that well, probably people are going to show up for the second one and want a third one. So
yeah.
I feel like maybe that's why they waited. Because again, huge gamble to be like, hey, I'm going to make a movie and not film any more for a second movie. But this movie, nothing happens. Really,
it's so
barely
crazy
anything.
that people say that nothing happened.
Barely anything happened.
So much happens in the movie.
It drives me crazy that you kept saying the movie shows and not tells, where I'm like, that first movie is telling you.
It tells you in the beginning, especially. I mean, it has to with the narration to understand.
You'd be so confused.
And the way that the narration tells you is interesting because it's like, you know, you get the beginning with the dream and everything like that, but the video books, I can't remember exactly what they call them, telling you as Paul is learning from them. I thought that was an interesting touch, you know? Yeah. Instead of him just saying, oh, I'm going to go to Arrakis and like, oh, these are the things. It's like, okay, so it's kind of like a separate entity kind of going about as he's learning. And I enjoyed that.
Yeah, I don't know how else you could do it because it definitely was a tutorial on the world of Dune.
I'm so annoyed.
but I mean, I'm just saying, like, I don't know how else they could have done it because if they didn't explain that stuff in defense of them, if they didn't explain, you'd be like, what the crap is going on? I mean, I said that, but also sci-fi stuff sometimes doesn't register in my brain. Yeah. But I recognize, at least I'm like, okay, they're explaining to people who understand. I'm not one of them, but I'm sure so many people are getting so much information here. So again, I don't know how else you could have done it in a way where people would understand then what was going on.
Exactly.
But it was also a 2.5 hour tutorial on like, here's how you watch Dune Part 2.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I feel you.
So, but I can see I can't think of a better way for them to do it.
Yeah. I want to know what you thought about Shawnee and Paul together. Because we haven't really talked that much about their relationship
aspect.
Yeah.
I thought it felt pretty organic with the story. The ending was a little jarring for me, but again, knowing, and the director already said, like, I would, without spoiling anything, he said, I would make a third one without saying, like, there's going to be 100% a third one. He had already said there's going to be that. So the ending, I get narratively why, and like why Timmy would want to marry the space princess.
Well, I mean,
instead for political power.
Right. They had been talking about that throughout the movie as well. I mean, the whole time, even the first movie, his mother was saying, like, oh, you need to marry the princess so that, with the political alliance and everything like that. So throughout this, she was saying things like, oh, you're letting love blind you from your goal. Like, all of these things need to happen in order for this to happen. So they're in the theater when it actually happened, where he decided to say, like, I'll love you forever. And then the moment that he says to the emperor, I will take your daughter's hand, there were gasps. They were like, oh my God, in the theater. And at first I was like, oh damn, like that blows. And it kind of like, you kind of feel like it might happen because he says like, I'll love you forever. But especially my second time watching it, it becomes more evident, like more understandable, the way that it happened and why he said what he did. And it's like, I mean, it was the whole point all along for him to do that. And yeah, sometimes when you love someone, it doesn't work out because there are other circumstances that take over. And like, what do you do in that instance? You got to do what you got to do in order to be the Messiah. But I'm interested in seeing how that works throughout the third movie as well.
Yeah, and I know politically it's a thing. I mean, Queen Elizabeth didn't want Charles marrying a normie like Diana. So I get it. I just felt like, power play, it makes sense. But at least for me, I didn't see that transition of his character then wanting, like, realizing that's what he had to do. It felt very abrupt first. I didn't see the conflict. And maybe, again, I only saw it once. Maybe I missed the conflict, but it was, they're falling in love. They're together as I love you as long as I breathe, or whatever his whole thing was. And then it's like, but I'm going to go and marry this lady.
Hey, bye.
It didn't, I wish there was a little bit more, at least, because I know he was conflicted with just taking care of the people in general. Mm-hmm. But I felt like there wasn't that conflicted feeling about her.
Yeah.
So it just felt really out of the blue for me in that moment. But again, saw it once, maybe I missed that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I feel like I should watch it again just because you say that. But I don't know. I mean, I feel like that might have been something for the audience reaction then.
Sure.
Because that moment, like when you can see her clenching up, it's like, oh man, like forgot, like that was a thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I don't know. I really enjoyed their relationship throughout the movie. She's his mentor and everything with his journey, and she really helped him along the way. So I'm curious if like she will be understanding, or if she'll even be a part of the third movie. But she's a big part. Like the women in these movies are incredibly strong. They're incredibly like, they are equals to the men also within this entire universe, which is incredible. Also the mother, with the Reverend Mother and everything, no one else was able to take on the water of life and things like that. And her teaching Paul and all of these things, it's like he has all of these great female presences, like all of these people just are there for him and there for each other as equals for the most part. Sometimes they're like, oh, you woman, whatever. But, for the most part, and it's, I don't know, it's incredible. Oh, one thing I did want to mention, Austin Butler, his voice was so deep and so like, he was very much matching Stellan Skarsgård. which I really enjoyed and everything. But I also was like, I really hope he doesn't choose this voice for the rest of his life like he did with Elvis, because that would be unfortunate.
Yeah, I only know him from Elvis. So when I saw him, I'm like, oh, I guess just his face normally has duck lips.
Oh my God.
But then I saw a picture of him outside of there and I'm like, oh no, he chose duck lips for Dune Part 2.
You're so mean.
But no, I'm not. It was choice. That was his... Like, that was his thing. And I'm like, I just thought that was his face. So I don't, like, whatever. It is what it is. But then when I saw a picture, I'm like, oh, no, he did that for the movie. That was an acting choice.
You realize that people are going to, like, make you a meme now, like, of you doing that face. You got to be careful what you do. I guess
we'll see. Austin Butler fans are going to be super pissed. And they're going to do that.
All right. So this has been great. Very excited to talk more about other movies and everything like that. Let us know in the comments below what you guys thought about Dune Part 2. I really enjoyed it. I know Noah had some things. So let us know who you agree with more in the comments, because I'm really, really
I already know. I'm gonna get so much hate.
But yeah, we're excited for more, and we'll see you in the next one.